Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Justis Earle with us today. He has a nice sword and a lion. It's probably one of the most epic background I've seen so far. He's the founder at SnapClip in Silicon Valley IPO. The guy's really interesting. It's not his first startup, quite unconventional. So we're gonna have fun today talking about his background and Snap specifically, which I thought was quite ingenious. This podcast is brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start a podcast and monetize it through sponsors, lead generation, and YouTube AdSense, you can go to podfire.com. We have a free ebook teaching you how to do this. Justis, okay, Just, welcome to the pods. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Right on, man. Thank you. I live in Santa Cruz. We're about 30 minutes south of Silicon Valley. Right now we're working on SnapClip. We've got a couple new products that we're launching, and we're building an ecosystem. So our focus is Gen Z content creators, because just content creators in general is going to blow up in the next few years. But as I'm sure you know, as a 50-time founder, you can't just put something out into the world and expect it to work, even if it's something really good. You have to nurture relationships, and you have to build the market and build an ecosystem to support what you're doing. So that's what we're focused on right now. My past, I went to school for biology. I graduated in the Great Recession, 2008, and it was brutal job market. One of the worst depressions since the Great Depression, so it's tough to find work. There was a heavy emphasis at the university I went to around environmental challenges, and specifically energy challenges. So I've been thinking about clean energy a lot, and my friend recruited me to a clean tech company in Silicon Valley. And I basically started out at the bottom there because they were they're a technology company, and my degree, my studies were in biology. I have this degree in biology. It didn't help a ton. It helped a little bit because I have a STEM background, but with a engineering heavy environment, software and hardware, I had to learn everything. So I started from the bottom there, and the CEO was from Intel, and they would say things like, within the company, they would say things like, we're going to be the Intel inside of the solar industry. So it was like, I was riveted by that, because I was fortunate enough to get my whole family pitched together when I was a kid. And I got this, giant IBM computer, and I just loved learning about it. And just the hardware and the software side. But by the time I graduated college, it was like all the big computing companies that already happened, that wave had kind of passed in a way. And so I was like, well, what's the next big thing? And now I'm at this intersection of green energy, which is going to be huge, still obviously is huge, and like computing, but like computing for green energy. So I was riveted. I was locked in, and I spent 7 years there. We became an industry standard. We created a new category within solar, within, power electronics, within green energy. And then in 2023, that company went public. So it was a rocket ship ride. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about startup culture, about engineering, about, just doing international business. I was fortunate enough to travel to Europe and China and Canada and Hawaii, and, got a lot of really cool travel experience, and it was a great experience. But eventually, wanted to start my own thing and be I didn't want to be on the crazy train anymore. I wanted to be the conductor of my own crazy train. So I jumped into entrepreneurship.
And that was hand snap almost, more than a decade ago. So that was a long ride, wasn't it?
Which ride? It's been a long
And
ride.
Snap. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started Hand Snap while I was still at the tech company because I was trying to figure out what my next move was. And so I was just like, nights and weekends, I was just working on my own gadgets, working on my own products, building the website. We ended up doing a Kickstarter campaign while I was still at the tech company. And so, as you're a 50-time founder. You've done quite a lot of things. I'm looking forward to seeing somebody interview you. I should be interviewing you. But as you when you get that spark and you're running after things, sometimes you do too many things, and that season was pretty tricky because I was commuting it to Silicon Valley with this startup, and I also had a band, and I was doing my own startup, and so just I never had any downtime. I never took a break. I was just 24/7 working on something. And then, just trying to figure out like, okay, I can see the chapter with the tech company, the Silicon tech company. For me, I was like wanting to transition, but not really sure how to, get the funding and get enough momentum for my own project. So yeah, I mean, technically I've been working on launching products into the market for 10 years now. So yeah.
And where does that bring Hand Snap today in SnapClip precisely? Like you're in markets, you're in Best Buys, I believe. How's the company moving forward nowadays?
Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, you're in Best Buys, I believe, or you're in
Yep.
stores you launched right after a
Yep.
long Kickstarter campaign. So the product is out. What are your goals inside the company for this year? Where do you want to bring it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've launched a number of different products over the years, and they've all kind of dovetailed into the next one. I'm an inventor, so that's the other challenge with inventors. It's like there's sometimes you get flooded with ideas, and you need to focus on executing on one thing. So I've got this whiteboard, I've got spreadsheets where I'm cataloging different ideas. But really just focusing on one thing and cultivating one opportunity before you jump into the next thing. So we've launched a handful of different products. We did a Kickstarter. The previous product before this, we launched into the number one department store in the world. It was in London, Selfridges, London. We've done influencer campaigns. We've done a lot of different things. And then this product, SnapClip, we launched into Best Buy. So it was our first big retail partnership, retail launch. We've sold 45,000 SnapClips. And now we're taking everything we've learned on with influencers and the brick and mortar, Best Buy experience. We've got 2 new products right now that we're going to be launching this year. And so we're looking to scale this experience. We've been talking to a ton of people in the industry, whether it's big incumbent mobile accessory companies. We're talking to the biggest distributors of mobile products in North America. We're talking with buyers from the biggest retailers that you'd recognize all these names. And that was another thing that we've learned along this path of inventing and launching products is, when you're got something new, when you've got an invention, when you've got a project, there's this initial excitement where you're like, oh my gosh, the world needs this. And I just need to do anything possible to get it out into the world. And then everybody's going to rush in and buy this thing. And that's not actually accurate most of the time. Tim Ferriss has this quote, and he goes, don't worry about people stealing your ideas. Even if it's a good idea, you're going to have to beat somebody over the head to do anything with it. And a great example of that is I was sitting at an airport one time, and I was thinking about that quote, and I was thinking about how challenging it is to get a new product into the world, to change people's habits and patterns. You got to switch what somebody's doing with their life to get them to do your thing now. That's not a small ask. You got to get their attention first. Even like today, that's the hardest thing to do, is get somebody's attention. So it's not a small task. So I'm sitting there at the airport just thinking about this, some business trip, and I'm watching people rolling by with their luggage, and I'm I'm old enough to remember when luggage did not have wheels. And I'm like, somebody thought of luggage with wheels. So I just looked up the story, and sure enough, luggage with wheels took years to get adopted because of men's egos. Guys didn't want to be seen rolling their luggage. They want to carry their luggage like a man. And I'm just, and now, of course, that sounds so silly. It's like obvious now. But anyway, so that's that kind of how you launch a product, how you engage ecosystems, how you engage the customer. I've launched a number of products, and we've had some interesting things. We've learned a lot, but the biggest thing I've learned is building that ecosystem and finding a home for the product before you kill yourself delivering the product. You know, and so that's what we've been working on, is building all of the relationships, building the interest, building the retail channels, building the partnerships, proving, you know, the traction on social media with our, you know, desired customer. And that's where we're at. So this year is going to be a big year for us. You know, we're launching new stuff. We've got a lot of great people that we're working with and ecosystems that we're building.
Yeah, great lesson there. Product market fit, is incredibly hard and requires you to be good at sales and get like thousands, if not million bits of feedback, right? So I am huge on that. I'm also sort of the inventor type. I love product, but started in sales, right? So still need to learn a bit more on the product side of things. The luggages on wheel is very interesting. What I feel would be needed in that space would be an off-road luggage on wheels that could go like on the rocky streets of Oaxaca, for example.
Yeah.
People arrive like all cozy in the airport, right? But what when they're dropped off, or what if they have to run for 1 kilometer with that thing? It becomes a total mess, right? So I think that would be a great invention. Talking about this, can you tell me about the use case of the clip thing here? I have it in front of me, but most people still don't know like what it is, what it does, right? How did you got the idea, and what's the specific use case for it? Why is it still relevant for people with iPhones nowadays to have the SnapClip?
Yeah. Yeah. So the previous product we launched was a media ring. So it was a ring that you wore on your index finger. It was Bluetooth, so you connect it to your, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, and it had a couple of different buttons so you could do volume. It was basically this right here. So this control right here, play and pause, volume up, volume down. We basically took this, we made it wireless, and you wore it on your finger. And what we found with that product was we were the first to launch that product in the world, to my knowledge. And it was a great product. People liked it. We did a big influencer campaign. We had some traction. That was the product we launched in Selfridges in London. But what we found immediately was it was tough to get the cost down. The quality was tough to get consistent. The SKU management was tough because it was, size dependent, and it was fairly niche because, rings are typically more worn by women than, the general audience. So what we learned from that was, okay, we have something cool here. This is a media controller. How do we simplify it? And my co-founder is from the first president of PopSockets. And if you're familiar with PopSockets, they've sold 275 million units. A big part of their win was that they have all these different graphics on the pop socket. You know, you can do it for the promotional industry. You can have companies and you give them away and get your brand out there. Or for the, you know, the collector, once you get a customer, you get one customer will buy 100 pop sockets. So it's this really fun, creative business model. So we basically combine those two concepts. We're like, okay, we've got this media ring that nobody else has done. We were seeing some traction here. My partner's background is from PopSockets. You know, we've done a deep dive in how they were successful with early adopters and what channels were working for them and why it was clicking, and we put them together. And so now with SnapClip, it's a single button. You know, we simplified it as much as possible. It's a single button remote control for your media. So anything, any media on your phone, whether it's your camera, your audio, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, it'll operate anything that's open on your phone. And so, you know, it clips to anywhere. I usually, you know, have one on my hat bill. It'll clip on your shirt. The idea is that you're staying in the flow of what you're doing. So if you're working, I use it on my laptop a lot. It keeps me away from having to, if the song I'm listening to sucks, or if I need to pause it or whatever, it keeps me from getting distracted, picking up my phone, changing it, getting distracted from whatever's on my screen. If I'm in the gym, same thing. You know, I'm staying focused on my grind in the gym rather than, you know, finding my phone wherever I set it down at the gym and controlling that. So so that's the focus is content creators, athletes, you know, people with an active lifestyle to stay in the focus of what they're doing.
Right. And I was like, isn't this like one Siri update away from being wiped out? But like, if you mention, hey, Siri, take this photo while you're speaking, it will take a bad photo, right?
Yeah, I mean, so voice, so the big voice boom, at least in hardware, was 2018, and voice hardware exploded, and then it kind of dropped off because the market got saturated. So voice is obviously really powerful. It's not going anywhere. It's even getting better. There's even things like gesture controls, you know, you can do with Samsung. Apple's a little bit late to the game, but with Samsung, there's certain gesture controls that you can do to take a picture and start and stop video and stuff like that. The way that we see our product is not really competitive with those products. We see it as collaborative. So we see our product as like it's like a Batman belt, right? In whatever situation Batman's in, he's got the right tool on his belt for that exact situation. And so if you're bombing down the mountain on a snowboard, like you've got a giant button, you know, we've got it on a pull tab on your zipper jacket, right? You've got a giant button where you're controlling the operations. You got huge gloves on. You can't control the tab. You can't yell into your microphone, right? So it's the same thing for skateboarding. It's the same thing for content creators. If you're doing a take over and over and over, which to get that perfect take, to get that line just dialed, to get the lighting right, to do everything right, you're doing takes over and over, start and stop, start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. So, you know, we just have a tool that fits within the creator ecosystem that depending on what situation that you're in, it's the best tool for the job. Now, it's obviously not the only tool for the job. You've got a whole toolkit, but it's a cost-effective product. You know, the products that we're launching, they're, you know, $19.99 and $39.99. So we're not competing with the big tech companies. It's a collaborative product. It's a new tool for your tool belt that's, you know, very accessible and approachable.
And how would you use influencers to scale sales? Would you send a product for free and ask them for a review, or what's the strategy here?
Yep. So we actually don't ask for reviews. We send the product out to influencers. We make sure that they're engaged. You know, we ask them, hey, do you like this product? Well, first we look at influencers and see, hey, is this a good brand fit? Because there's a lot of people out there that are just, it's not the right culture fit, right? So we just look at, are these people a good culture fit? And then we see if they're engaged. hey, what do you think about our designs? Because we've got all these different designs. We ask them, hey, pick some designs. You know, and if they're engaged, if they show engagement, we send them some product, and we don't ask for anything. That's enough right there. Is they tell us what designs that they like, they show engagement. So that's a big data point for us. And then a very high percentage of them end up posting for free. We don't ask them to post. We don't ask for anything, because that's the biggest indication of organic engagement is, if they're willing to share with their audience. So we did a ton of that. We've got a lot of great, relationships, connections with Gen Z content creators. It was a big proof case that we did for that first version of SnapClip. So now we're excited to go back with our new versions and, re-engage our base of Gen Z content creators and, show them something new.
Right. Last but not least, let's talk about heavy metal. You've had your band. You still listen to a lot of it and probably play instruments. What lessons have you learned from running a band, and how did you apply these lessons into your business?
That's awesome. That's a great question. So I got invited to, I forget exactly what it was, kind of like this mastermind for high school students, high school entrepreneurs, which was blowing my mind. These kids were like building companies and studying things that took me a long time to even get exposed to. And I was sitting next to Adam Draper. And if you know the Draper family, Adam Draper is a fourth generation investor. And, his dad's Tim Draper. The dude's a legend. And I was like, oh, Adam Draper, we're talking to these kids. And it was just, it was very fascinating. And he asked me that exact question, or something came up about music. And he goes, you know what I have found? He said, I've found that musicians or band leaders in particular make great entrepreneurs. And I was surprised that he said that because I hadn't made that connection. And he goes, yeah, I mean, you're leading a team, you're building a product, you're promoting your product, and it's really freaking tough. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that was the light bulb moment for me that made that connection. And until that point, I hadn't really thought about it in that way. And I've really leaned into that because, I started the band, I recruited all the band members, I wrote most of the music, I booked almost all of the shows, I did the flyer production, and we made videos and, content to promote our shows. And we were playing death metal. So in a small town, so the shows were pretty hit and miss. Some shows would have like 10 people. So you're doing a lot of work to get ready, to promote, to write, to create, to build all this stuff, and then you get 10 people to show up. And it's like, okay, at that point, do you choose gratitude that like, oh my gosh, 10 freaking people are coming to hear what we're doing, or are you bummed that like, well, more people, like, how do you respond to that? And like, the best response is by learning. Okay, how do we engage more people? What are we doing? How can we, shift our messaging or whatever? So yeah, there's a lot of learning there, and I've been very intentional the last several years to like, okay, what did we learn in music? Specifically now that we're doing a music focused product, there's a lot of holistic integration that I'm doing in my life right now.
What kind of holistic integration? What habits you nurture to be a better founder and better human being?
Well, I try to look at everything as a whole, as I am a being. We're all here. None of us are getting out alive, and so what are we doing with every moment? Every moment matters. What we do matters. What we choose to do matter. So it's like what lights us up, what motivates us? Are we always just chasing, money because we're insecure? about survival, or are we chasing things that somebody else thinks is valuable for our life? Like, are we tapping into the things that we truly believe in? Are we being authentic and honest with ourselves to build something that we find meaningful? Or are we just kind of stuck in this, hamster wheel of, oh, this is what my parents think, this is what society thinks, this is what school systems think, this is what my friend group thinks, and oh, I'm afraid to take a risk, so I can't jump and do this new thing, so just really kind of peeling back all those layers of the onion of removing the ego, removing other people's expectations. I really, how am I made? What am I designed to do here? And am I really taking the time to, you said nurture. I love that word. Are we taking the time to nurture the highest version of ourselves? Or are we just kind of, going through the motions?
Yeah, I like that. Justice, where can people find out more about you?
Right now I'm focusing a lot on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well, but not as much. Those are probably the best channels.
Justice Earle and Charles Cormier for another founder